Often people take their dogs out in public and they start doing their training, and all of a sudden their dog won't take any treats. Often this gets discounted as just distraction, but there might be more going on underneath the surface. So in this video, I'm breaking down why exactly your dog has stopped taking the treats out in the world and what you can be doing about it. Let's get into it. What's up guys, it's Jenna with Dog Liaison, where I coach you on how to enhance your dog's mental health. On this channel, we look at scientific research in order to inform us on how to train dogs. I'm a professional dog trainer who works exclusively with dogs facing multiple anxiety-related disorders. And one of the things that I hear a lot from people who first come to work with us, or subscribers in the comments, or people on my IG, is that when they take their dog out to do some loose leash walking training or some reactive dog training, all of a sudden their dog stops taking treats. And they know that the treats are valuable because when they give the dog the treats inside the house, the dog will swallow it all up, say yummy gooey gooey, get all excited. But as soon as they take their dog out into the public to actually do some training in real life situations, all of the food loses its value. Now, it might be really easy to discount this as, well, the treats are just not valuable enough. And so a lot of times you'll hear from trainers say, well, you just gotta find more valuable treats. And sometimes that's true, but in my experience, it has less to do with how valuable or invaluable a particular flavor is and has everything to do with the dog's emotional and cognitive state in that moment. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, well, yeah, Jenna, the dog is just too distracted. But as I said earlier, a lot of times distraction is sort of an underestimation. It sort of undermines what's actually happening. One of the D words I want you to use instead of distraction is distress. And this is a different way of looking at distraction, not from the sense of, oh, he's just aloof and he thinks something over there is more stimulating, but it comes down to there is a physiological discomfort, a physiological experience occurring that is preventing your dog from being able to value that treat. Let's get into what I mean. So when a dog becomes super aroused, overwhelmed by an environment or by a trigger, what's going to happen internally is the fight, flight, or freeze response is going to be engaged. Now, this is an automatic response. It's not a decision that the individual makes to be like, let's pump some adrenaline through our body. It's just a physiological automatic response, comes hardwired in the dog to be able to handle these high arousing situations. And what this actually means is that the amygdala, or the fight, flight, or freeze system, is going to start pumping more blood, more oxygen through the central nervous system. And when it does this, it's pumping more blood, but it's also very decisive about where it's sending the majority of those resources. So the majority of the resources are going to be sent to the muscles so that they can fill up with blood and be prepared to respond. The blood is going to be sent to places in the body that would be able to handle this inevitable stressor or this situation that the body thinks it needs to respond to. Where it's not going to send blood is in some of these automatic systems like reproduction and like digestion. And so what ends up happening is the digestion system, it's not getting no blood, it's still getting some resources, it's just not getting as many resources. And so it kind of goes on pause. And the body is not going to necessarily crave food in that moment because it's sending blood and resources to other parts of the body that do need those resources more. And this is what ends up happening when a dog, or any individual for that matter, not just a canine, but even humans, becomes over aroused, is they may not want to eat because that particular system, while it's an automatic system, is being temporarily dimmed down. It's being temporarily unused. And so it's not going to recruit food or demand food if it doesn't necessarily have the resources to be able to digest it. Even still, with all of that said, what is unavoidable, what is absolutely the truth, is that food is always a primary resource, which means that the body needs it. The body inherently desires it. And so if you see a dog or any animal not taking food, not accepting food, what that really tells you is that primary resource, as valuable as it is to that individual to sustain life, is not valuable enough in that moment in order to protect itself, in order to save itself. from this stimulating, arousing situation. It's being decisive about where it's going to put its energy. And so that's the most common reason why I see dogs not taking their foods, is that they are in a distressed situation and the body is not willing to accept food in that moment. If that's the case, if this is resonating with you and you think, oh, maybe this is what's going on, what that really tells you is you need to set up your environment in a safer way for your dog to pick healthy decisions. I recommend using a protocol called counter conditioning and desensitization, which is going to help your dog be exposed to its trigger, exposed to its environment, to its stimulus at a healthy rate while creating a classically positive conditioned response to it that's going to make the dog feel comfortable, keep that CNS at bay, and is going to keep the dog, desiring its primary resources like food. The second reason your dog may not be taking treats out in the world maybe has less to do with distress and has more to do with the value of the treat in comparison to what is going on in the environment. Now, earlier I mentioned that very rarely is it that the treat is just not valuable enough, and this is true. That said, you do want to be aware of how hard your dog is working. And when you're thinking about how hard your dog is working, what comes into play is actually what's going on in the environment. It has less to do with what your dog is physically doing, whether they're walking or they're doing a sit. That has less to do with the criteria. And what's more about the criteria is what is occurring in the environment. How many people are there? How many other dogs are there? What are those people and dogs doing? How close are they to your dog? What is actually occurring in the environment, that is what actually dictates the difficulty that is imposed on your dog at that moment. And so if your dog is facing a very difficult situation and is putting out a lot of effort, then you want to be mindful of paying them comparably. What I see very often is that people are not paying their dog with the value enough treat, the value of a reward in comparison to the effort putting out. And if that's the case, then the dog is going to start to question, like, why would I want to be in this environment? Why would I want to do that sit? Why would I want to be at this difficult of a range if I'm not reaping any reward from it? The third reason why your dog may have stopped valuing treats out in the world has actually something to do with a thing called luring. Now, if you know what luring is, you might be thinking, Jenna, that's a little counterproductive, but I know, stay with me. If you don't know what luring is, that's effectively when a person puts the treat up to the dog's nose and guides them into the position that they want. So they guide them into the sit, they guide them into the stand, they guide them into a down, whatever it is, they guide them into a position by putting the treat in front of their face, and then as soon as the dog hits the position, they give the treat. Now, this might seem counterproductive in that the food is obviously accessible, the food is obviously there, and there's no reason why that food should have lost its power. But ironically, what I see is that the more accessible something is, the less value it has. And so if you're constantly whipping out a treat to lure and coerce your dog into a position that they don't really want to be in and they're not deciding to be in it on their own, you're just sort of coercing them into it. If that's what's happening, then you're accidentally decreasing the value of your treat just by means of having it already always accessible. And so think about how often the treat is actually coming out. How available to your dog is it? And are you maintaining the value of the treat to its max capacity? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you get notified when I drop a new video. Make sure to check out some of these other tutorials right here to train your dog, and I'll see you guys in the next video.